Hmm. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our opening IBA stage event for 2025. We are extremely happy to have with us the makers of the 9th edition of Asian Art Biennial, How to Hold Your Breath. For those that don't know much about Asian Art Biennial, Asian Art Biennial is an important biennial exhibition, of course, hosted and organized by the National Taiwan Museum of Fine Art. Since its establishment in 2007, it has been committed to presenting the development of contemporary art in the region with an emphasis on Asian arts. And I think this will be part of the discussion afterwards. The event has in recent years convened curators with cross-disciplinary backgrounds to help shape curatorial mechanisms through collective dialogue. Invitations for the participation of Asian artists from diverse culture and wide-ranging perspectives has enabled the creation of a platform for interaction and dialogue. The last edition of Asian Art Biennial was entitled How to Hold Your Breath, and it was imagined and created by 5 curators, 4 of which we have here today. And I'll start introducing them more or less in the order in which we also presented them in the last few days online. So starting from Fang Yen-Hsiang, who is a curator, an art critic, and a researcher that with his research explores contemporary aesthetics, new media, moving image, and the evolving landscapes of contemporary art institutions in Asia. His practice is informed by a deep engagement with institutional structures, alternative spaces, and the way in which art engages with social realities. Also with us today is Anne Davidian. Hello, Fang. Also with us is Anne Davidian. Anne Davidian is a curator and researcher exploring alternative social imaginaries with a focus on non-oppressive communal forms. She is currently the curator of the opening festival at the new Almaty Museum of Arts, which is due to open in summer 25. She also curated Garib, the pavilion of Armenia at the 59th Venice Art Biennial, and initiated What Makes an Assembly, which is published by Steinberg Press, which was published by Steinberg Press in 2022. And is a cross-disciplinary publication on forms of assembling across histories and geographies. The third curator that is present with us today, presenting their project, is Merv Espina, who is an artist, researcher, and curator whose work navigates the intersection of contemporary art, sound cultures, and social engagement. Merv has exhibited, intervened, and performed in ad hoc and informal initiatives, as well as institutions and major international art events, including the Jakarta Biennial in 2015, Yokohama Triennial in 2020, and Colombo Scope in 2024. His curatorial and research work spans a wide range of artistic and social practices, often engaging with sound, media, and alternative networks. Last but not least with us today is Asli, who is an independent researcher, curator, and writer based between Istanbul and Paris. Her practice operates on the borderline between fiction and reality, with a focus on infrastructure, landscape, and alternative pedagogies. She emphasizes methods of fieldwork and co-creation in her curatorial approach. Among her recent exhibitions are Under Two Suns, which was a selection of 66 works by 45 artists at Odunpazarı, which is the Museum of Modern Art in Eskişehir. I'll try to read that correctly. Electroisolanación, which was unknown parameters, extra records, which is a solo exhibition by artist Emre Hüner at Art Museum in Istanbul. Live Among and Turn Together, which was a group exhibition and performance series curated at Galerie La Box in Bourges in 2021. I think this gives an overview of who we have here with us presenting the exhibition. We're extremely happy to have all of you and such a large audience as well. So to give you enough space to present and talk about your exhibition, I will close the presentation here, give you the word, and yeah, looking forward to hearing more about how the whole process went and what holding your breath, how to hold your breath was.
Thanks to IBA Stage and thanks to Christian for inviting us. And okay, now I will start from sharing the screen. I want to start the whole story from the initiation of the team. That when I got the mission from the National Taiwan Museum of Fine Art for initiating the curatorial team of the ninth edition of the Asian Art Biennial. So during the time, in the context of the post-pandemic situation and in facing the contemporary world that requires transformation, yet is filled with conflict, suffering, and crisis. So it naturally prompted me to think about how to use this biennial as a platform to raise questions in response. So from this, I developed with a very broad framework based on several key concern and reflection at the time. So at the moment, I was curious about the concept of the uh, regeneration, especially refer to this post-pandemic condition, and I'm really curious about the power it hold within like a different region cultures and the art and especially life practice to refer to this regeneration, the rehabilitation concept, and so inevitably touched upon the idea of reforming ecosystem, ability of self restoration. Is also the potential of a collective body, collective action. So it, there were very broad concept and question I would like to address, and then I also think about refer to all those previous editions of Asian Art Biennial. What can we bring to the also the art in the art landscape in Taiwan? So so I start with the idea forming a team with the collective practice, curatorial team. Yeah, and yes. So um, let me start from the. I need to shift my share screen to another to the next slide. Please hold on. Try to. Please hold on. I'm sharing the video. Hey, since it doesn't appear here. So yeah.
Fang, we can see the video.
Yeah, you can see? Okay, yes, maybe someday here. Okay, so I keep continuing. Yeah. So, compared to the previous edition of the 2021 Asian Art Biennial, Phantasmopolis, which had the branching and the umbrella-like structure with different sub-themes for curators and researchers, that each of the curators or research hold their own individual project in the umbrella of the Asian Art Biennial, but I did not intend to have each curator to work on separate or individual theme for this time. And also after discuss with our team, like we also decide to adopt a more roundtable structure tutorial like process. So yeah, so when the National Taiwan Museum of Fine Art invite me, they gave me like they expressed their preference about a team-based curatorial approach, and then they gave me the full freedom to decide to select to the curators I would like to work with and the structure of the team framework. And during the process, I considered different models and I had a longer list of potential curators. But after talk with Asli and Heiju and Merv, yeah, I feel that a very positive vibe between us. That's the way we start the team. So the image I'm showing, maybe the Anna will add more later. Yeah, that's from the Armand, the Sonic Trip from the artist Andrews in our vinyl. Yeah. So 20 the 2022 24 Asian Biennial adopt the collective territorial model as its working approach through the process of sharing exploration is seek to address urgent issues in contemporary society, culture, ecology, and ethics, as well as the condition and the dynamic of coexistence in today's world or Asian. So that's the starting point, and our collective effort have led us to the theme how to hold the breath. Maybe other character ask more and can address this more. So how to hold the breath address that. Uh, uh, yeah, that's the concept. We see this as a call to action and imagine it as a deep dive, a moment of suspension before confronting a uncertain and resolve the future. So that's the basic starting point, starting story for the Asian Art Biennial. Yes. Okay, so let me shift to our. Okay. So the very basic general like concept of the title and the theme, how to hold your breath, evoke the action of voluntary pause of vital function, create a state of anticipation, a twist. It's a twist on the saying, "Oh, don't hold your breath," warning not to accept the change soon. Yeah, and but it suggests a latent hope. So we twist from this don't hold your breath and make the dive into the different layers and the meaning of how to hold your breath. That's how we develop that from to into the expression. So so you can see that's it's the view from outside of the National Taiwan Museum of Fine Arts, and you can yes. So we can start and. So we can start from the first piece from the outside, from the window side, but yeah, and then in the whole we can see like visionary universe work. I will give mic to Anne to have a.
Yes, thank you, Fang. Thank you for this introduction. You started with the images of Taichung, actually, that were from a test drive for a sound performance by Andrew Sarutunian that was called Armen. So biennial kind of begin elsewhere in the city. This idea of a displacement, because the sound of that piece was playing the Armenian diasporic pop archives and ghost transmissions. The idea of displacement was not simply a theme, but a kind of a structured the work itself, and it resonated really with our curatorial vision too. That was very often constrained by institutional formats, we have to say. And here the visitors could drift away from these institutional formats and experience this informal and oral way of underground networks through which the diasporic cultures moved. So it was just a little note to that first images that we have seen. And the first image that the visitors would see when they would approach the museum would be this glow of the neon sign of Yoshinori Niwa that is written in Mandarin, and it says, unavoidable work to keep us alive. So this was a commission for the biennial, a new version of this work. It's both a welcome sign and unsettling statement in a sense. And the Niwa's works are dispersed throughout the museum. It's very short and precise and humorous interventions that function both as release and tension points. And so, of course, the work here refers to economic labor, often invisible, physical or emotional, but it also echoes the exhibition's title, reminding us that breath itself is this fundamental rhythm, is probably the primordial, unavoidable labor that keeps us alive.
I'm sorry, I muted the mic. So yeah. So in the whole, there's another work made by the indigenous artist Millet Mavaliu. The installation, the concept is also start from the collective power and also refer to the rhythm of life. So it refers to the memory of the community from the artist, but also the rhythm and the power of the life and how the gathering from the community. And so start from the gallery side, they get into the museum galleries. You can also start from this work, the Breathing the House work made by Hong Kong artist Pai Song Chen, and also this work referring to our exhibition title. And so let's slightly move into the one of the main gallery, and I'll give mic to Asli.
Yes, hello everyone. So introducing this first space within the biennial. Well, first of all, let me say that we've sort of adapted this presentation like an online tour of the exhibition. So entering in the first space, we have Nathalie Mouchamad's installation, but within the space, as you will see a little bit further on, we begin by, like thematically speaking, it's a series of works that deal with our relationship to land. Land as a resource, as an ecosystem, but also as a source of belonging, as an active actor in community building, and the transformations affecting our relationship to land historically and in contemporary world. So Nathalie Mouchamad's, I just want to speak a little bit about this one, because can you go back, Fang? So Nathalie's installation is actually an exploration of the breadfruit tree, which is an endemic species to Southeast Asia and also Taiwan. And what Nathalie does is that she tracks the history of the displacements and the geographical expansion of this plant, which starting from the 18th century was seen as a cheap source of nourishment for enslaved and indentured populations. So as people were displaced for labor reasons from Southeast Asia towards the Indian Ocean and the Caribbean, breadfruit tree was also following and being displaced along the same route. So she traces this movement through recipes, like she collects a lot of recipes, but also through history of representations of breadfruit in painting and cinema, because breadfruit was also the produce that the Bounty was carrying when the Bounty Mutiny happened in 1789, sorry. But I just wanted to maybe, Fang, if you can switch to the other slide, the presence of this artwork and the next one, which Anne will speak about in a minute, which is one of the instances where we try to reach beyond the exhibition and beyond the museum's limitations. And as Natalie had additional external grants, and she could, thanks to Fang and Merv's voluntary commitments also, she could undertake a whole series of travels and research across Taiwan, because breadfruit is very much used in Aboriginal kitchen and cultures in Taiwan. So there was a series of meetings, exchanges with artists from Aboriginal communities. The top, one of the top images, she's with Yumataru, and this is more textile based. But in the other images, you can see her in Tainan, where she was hosted by Shulun, who and she could, give presentations of her research, cook, collect recipes, cook together with people, taste what different recipes created, and engage in various kinds of research around breadfruit as a cultural and biological product. And this is an ongoing research, so it's one of the ways in which we hope that the biennial extends beyond its own temporal and spatial limitations. And then we switch to Marwa, which is right next to her in the space.
Marwa Arsanio's also is between places. She lives and works between Berlin and Beirut, very much connected to Lebanon. And she couldn't come because of the war in Lebanon. But the project was really thought in terms of engaging with the local issues and local activists. And the reason why we invited Marwa was this very unique way that she has to work with the core social and political issues. You remember when we were talking about the theme, not the theme actually, but our title, The Breath, How to Hold Your Breath. It was not a theme, but rather a whole range of imaginaries that this phrase provoked. And one of them, of course, was the question of holding your breath and imagining the next step, the transformation. And Marwa engages with these questions of imagining what are the other ways of living, other ways of organizing the collective life. And she does this by speculating, by testing, by engaging, and looking for different ways that people concretely organize their collective lives. So we invited here for this long-term research project called Who is Afraid of Ideologies, that brings works from different periods with a newly commissioned Taichung chapter. And here you see an installation shot with a film, reverse shot, a film that follows the transformation of a private land into a common plot in Lebanon, which led to maybe on the next, which led to a chart for usership of the land that you will see in the next slides. Maybe Fang, you can pass to the next slide. Here you see a detail of from textile works from her project with Kurdish autonomous women's movement. So you see that her artistic practice and research actually actively shape each other. They don't just coexist. They bridging this theory with lived experiences and connecting also the struggles across geographies and temporalities. So Fang, please continue. Here, yes, you see a shot from the film in Lebanon, and the chart that was printed out as a city banners in Taichung. And so in Taiwan, this research took shape of collaboration with curator Ming Jun Tsai and artist studio, Quantan Studio, whose work is rooted in rural Tainan. And so together they convened a reading group of farmers and researchers, opening up the space to discuss how to move beyond extractive agricultural models. And these discussions and research extended into the exhibition through a meeting point, what we call this meeting point, that was co-designed with Quantian. And it's a space for visitors to read, to study, to slow down the usual rhythm of an exhibition visit, and maybe even start a conversation with others. So instead of moving through artworks, visitors are invited to engage with research and to step into the process. Here you see the meeting point with the background, the image of another artwork. Merv, here, maybe you can say a few words.
So this is a work by Hitman Gurung. It's a photographic series called The Revolutionary Dreams. So it draws on the memories of the artist's birthplace, Najare and Lamjung, and the changes of so-called economic development and the consequences of the People's War in that landscape. So like the Philippines, where I have a passport from, they're like a major export of Nepal is people. So over 3,000 people leave Nepal every day to find work, to become cheap labor for the Middle East and Malaysia in particular. So places like his birthplace, like Najare, are getting deserted. So in this photographic series, what you see are like juxtapositions of emptying places, places that are being abandoned, and portraits of people that had roles in these villages, like a guerrilla, a farmer, a teacher, a porter, a student, and their contemporary realities as low-cost labor in countries. So it's still also tied to land and the consequences of so-called development and the realities, the economic realities of now. And it also ties to the other themes of dispersal and diaspora and in the different artworks and like spaces and projects in the biennial.
Yeah, and moving through the same space, so we're still in land relationship spaces. This is a photographic series by Noor Abed, and then inside the black box here, you have her film, A Night We Held in Between, which deals with well, it's shot in ancient sites in Palestine, and it's a film where land really becomes a character and a source of belonging, community rituals, and spirituality. And then moving on from there, we have Sharon Chin, an artist from Malaysia, whose work Portal, well, as opposed to like a work like Hitman Gurung's, which it speaks more about the severing of the relationship to land. In Sharon's work, we have like a grounding of one's life in relationship to a space, like grounding oneself in place. And as you can see, there was a performance that she staged, a participatory performance during the opening days of the biennial. And with this, we can maybe move into another area of the biennial, which is the street, as the museum calls it. But maybe Merv, you can pick it up here. Oh, sorry. I mean, are you okay?
Yeah. No, it's indeed we start here because here we can allow what the space didn't allow us to do other connections.
Oh, should I go here? Okay. So this is actually a work by C.C. Wu, and it's a reiteration of a solo show that she did in Empty Gallery in 2023. And the main work and the title of the video is called Belonging in Difference. It's a short film that's a collaboration between Beijing-based photographer Yuan Yuan. And the work includes footage from the East Broadway Mall in New York's Chinatown during the pandemic, So it was made during this time period during the lockdown, and it has footage of Beijing in the wake of the white paper protest, and also includes scenes of family life during quarantine, memorial sites of the June 4th, um, and like underground queer parties, the Cross Harbor Tunnel in Hong Kong, and also references the siege of Hong Kong's Polytechnic University during the 2019-2020 demonstrations. So reflecting open wounds and somehow, you know. So and I like that this reference to the white paper protests is a kind of a visual riff that also you can see in different parts of the biennial, through different artists. Um, what you can see across CC's work is actually a photographic series by another artist that has some surface um, um, similarities to the white paper protests. This is a series that Kiri Dalena started in 2008. It's called Erased Slogans. When she worked with the archives of the Manila Chronicle, which was one of the newspapers that was closed during martial law, the Marcos martial law. Um, so these are, digitally erased slogans, words, and text were digitally erased from the placards and banners. So I think in a way, the erasure of the slogans can symbolically reenacts a kind of violent censorship that transpired also during martial law. And and the a kind of ubiquity. Where is this protest happening? Who are these people? What are they fighting for? Like in the light of this like blankness, like where is memory? How do we remember? Um, and I think you can also see this reiterated, for example, in like Korean artist Woo Sung Lee's paintings in another artwork in another space, and across CC's and Kiwi's work is actually a new commission by Taule Goffi, an artist of Afro-Chinese descent by way of Jamaica, and this is a work called Black Pacific Chinese Atlantic. Um, so much like CC's work, it's also an assemblage of personal and archival footage that centers a kind of Afro-Chinese diasporic return. So the return in question is that of Tao's grandfather and great grandfather when they came back to Hong Kong by way of Jamaica and New York in 1985. So it's a two-channel work, which is a tale of two British colonial islands. One is Jamaica, one is Hong Kong, and the work that dovetails across these encounters of commerce, remittance, and the tension of fraught family bonds across racial and national lines. And then maybe what you could see here is on the left you have Taipei, and on the right you have Yen-Hsiang. But I'll talk more about Taipei because I think it also mirrors a kind of uh, Natalie Muhammad's project in a way. So the starches, the food sources that the drive economies and the dependence. And this is actually a project that reconsiders Singapore's 30 by 30 goal of producing 30% of the food and nutritional needs of Singapore by 2030. But they actually have this weird situation where they planted trees instead of rice. So what if they planted rice instead of trees? So this is this true AI and archival materials. This is how Pei's reinterpretation of this. Na parang in all the different places that they grew and planted all these trees. What if it was rice instead? Moving on.
Yeah, thanks, Merv. This is Hwayeon Nam, also a new commission, a film from Hwayeon Nam about histories of dance between South Korea and Taiwan. But moving on, maybe, oh yes, maybe Anne, you can take it up, or I could move on because we're nearing 30 minutes at the moment.
Quickly about this installation, Mashinka Fiorunza Hakopian with Atlas Hakopian and Lara Sarkisian. And this installation really brings these different threads together about diasporic imaginaries and technologies. These artists see diaspora not necessarily as an identity category, but as kind of epistemic model, a way of structuring knowledge and memory and imagination. And here Mashinka challenges the Western scientific algorithmic predictions that script our futures while excluding structurally the speakers of non-dominant languages as authors. And so instead she trains an AI model in tasseography. This is a form of ancestral intelligence practiced by members of her Swana community that extends from West Asia to North Africa. And she reframes it as a data feminist approach that values intuitive and embodied knowledge. And so the work asks whose languages and knowledges encode our technologies and script our collective futures. So this was important for us to have this work that treats diasporic imagination not as a nostalgia, but as a space of reinvention, as kind of a counter hegemonic practice. And as with Marva, Mashing is a researcher also, and we wanted to share her research, and this is a meeting point that extends our installation with a selection of books and materials to dive deeper into the questions behind the work. Yoshinori Niwa again with a very provocative work here, especially the second part for Asian Art Biennial, commissioned for the biennial, where he sometimes it's just enough to read the title of Yoshinori's work, and here he asks the residents of Taichung to declare that if they die, Taiwan will disappear among this very tense geopolitical situation in Taiwan.
All right, picking up, I mean, we will need to quicken up a bit. So, well, maybe I should just, yeah, this is Gary Yen-Hsiang, The Tourist, which was an online commission. So you can see the film online. There's a website if you Google it. This film specifically deals with the history of Zanzibar through the evolution and life story of one single person, Ali Sultan Isa. And it's actually more of an essay around different world ordering moments in 20th century during the non-aligned movement and a period when Zanzibar had this socialist utopia and where China was also, like, they were very much in exchange with China. So it's an investigation of this past Chinese-African relationship era more than anything. And maybe I should just say that here you could maybe begin to see that through some of the works we just discussed, one of the threads in this biennial that we were trying to convey was we were trying to expand the notion of Asia because it's called Asian Art Biennial. And through the works of Gary, but also Tao Li Goff, which Merv just spoke about, and also Nathalie Mouchamad, you have this expanding notions from the Indian Ocean, the Chinese-African relationships, but also going to the Caribbean, an expansion of Asia through migratory routes, and also exchange of ideas and ideologies and circulation of products and so on. So that's one thread that we should maybe just quickly underline before moving on.
And the commission work by the Taiwanese artist Sitas Kojing also extend from the concept. Also, this will talk about the entanglement, following the covert structure, how they build up the mirror-like landscape between Thailand, the northern Thailand, and the central part of Taiwan. So we can move to another side of the exhibition.
We wanted to check maybe with Christian and the audience, because it took a bit longer. Should we maybe do a stop here and start talking about the curatorial process behind and the way we organized our collective work and the questions that we had, and then come back to the second part? So if just to liven up a little bit the flow. What do you think, Christian?
Hi, Anne. Sorry for intervening. Yes, I do think that it's a good idea, and maybe you can also use. Maybe it will also be the occasion of using some of the questions either between us or that the audience pose to exemplify that with some of the work. So I think it's a good idea to change now the mode of the presentation to a more collective one, let's say, or collective dialogue. I wanted to start with some of my questions, but I actually see that there has been some activities already in the chat. One question that was already partially answered was about Neil Yalter's work and the rap song featured in it, which is by some Filipino migrant.
It's a Filipino migrant rap group, and the name is RM Sikat and the Third. So it's not just one person; it's a group. But
Yes.
Maybe Fang, if you can bring the slide that links to Nilialtar, which should be a little bit further down. So this is a work, the work itself is a video installation composed of a video and a wall text. The title is I Am Circular Rituals under parentheses. So this is a work from 1992. Which we installed, and for the first time, this the video itself it's a video montage of things that Nil herself shot in the 70s, basically documenting Turkish migrant workers in Europe, but also Algerian women workers protesting in the streets. So it's like there's also her abstract animations on top of it, and it has its own soundtrack, which was specifically made for. Actually, it was a Whitney Museum commission in 1992, 1 minute long series of artworks, including hers. Anyway, this version, Neil has been for a long time wanting to turn this video into a hip hop or a rap song. This was her idea. It's been her idea for a long time, and we were discussing this, and then the idea came to me that this, the context in Taiwan would be an amazing place to do it, because we were aware, we were looking into migrant workers' living conditions and where they go and what they do, where they eat, and those kinds of things. And we've been aware from a very early stage that they had hip hop bands and they had these hip hop battles, which happens on Sundays, obviously, because they work. So we contacted one of these bands to ask if they would be interested in commissioning a new sound piece. But the text you see, the wall text, was supposed to work as an inspiration. So they had the text, like Nil's original poem, which is about, it's about her own nomadic identity of how we are all multiple and how we all move, we all come from displacement histories, and it's like this exclamation of I am, but as a multitude. So they took that as a source of inspiration, and there was a new rap song that they created that's like 5 minutes long. So it was a new video montage. Neil's original video is shown for maybe 20 minutes, and at the end, every 20 minutes, there's a 5 minutes of this rap song with a black screen and translation of lyrics, because the song is in Filipino. There are bits of English, but it's mainly in Filipino. So yeah, that was one of the works that we tried to connect to local context.
Nice, because if you follow the chat, there has been like a whole discussion
All
about
right.
where to find the song and so on. There's also another, which is not really a question, it's more of a comment in chats, but I'll go ahead and read it regardless. And it's by Luca Marchetti, who says he has to go. He's still in the chat, so I'm just checking if he still is with us. Maybe he wants to give you his feedback himself. But if he's not, I'll go ahead and read it. So I'll just wait 1 second. Check. Luca? Okay. I'll go ahead and read it. So he starts with, thank you guys. The work you're doing is extraordinary and brave. Even just taking the floor in this global situation is an act of courage. And you are doing much more. Good work and good luck with the nascent adventure. I say goodbye, expressing a small wish. Sorry, perhaps a little selfish. In such a situation of urgency, it is very difficult to distance oneself from the contents. To distance the contents from the themes, from the stories. I'm just trying to read it as best as I can, because they are more than serious and deserve a great attention. But for a biennial of art, I also expect a lot of attention to the aesthetics aspects of the proposals, the devices, the semiotic potential they have, the forms and the formations of languages invented or reinvented to give shape to the contents. I think this is a big stake for the present/future of art. Not only staging, but above all, giving shape / developing linguistic skills and strategies capable of generating more pervasive states of awareness and consciousness. It's just a comment. It closes with a bravo, good job, and keep us posted. But I wanted to have read it. I don't know if you have any reaction to Luca's comment. If you do, please go ahead, Luca. Okay. Moving on. Shihu Su also writes in chat, this time with a question, which is if you could explain a little bit about your working process. And I think I want to build on that a little bit, because I do think that it's important to have you here, because it gives us all a chance to reflect on this trend that is increasingly present in biennials of inviting multiple curators that have not previous experience with each other to work on a project. So maybe that can be a moment in which we can reflect on this. While we do this, Fang, may I ask you to switch off your shared screen? This is purely out of technical questions for the video afterwards.
Can I just intervene and tell you that I've been looking at the chat, and there's someone called Tracy who would like to write an article about this. Like, if I would love to share the link, just letting you know, because I realize I can't answer directly. Okay,
sure.
Me too. If you want to have more information from RM and all those rappers and artists and in the community, I would like to provide more information.
And just as a general information, just to add, if you have any questions, more detailed, or that might not be easily answerable through the chat or through this discussion, please also feel free to write to us at info@biennialassociation.org, and we'll be able to connect you or to relay you to whoever is more relevant in the team. Thank you, Jennifer, for providing also the link to the email. Before you answer the previous questions, I can also ask whoever wants, of course, it's entirely up to you. If you want to turn on your camera right now, that's just makes it more pleasant to talk with faces rather than just names. But you can also leave them off, of course. Sorry, go ahead. Working together.
We all have something to say. And indeed, Fang started saying that he had the total freedom of convening this team. And we have never worked together before. Usually the configurations are in this collective biennials that there is a collective proposal that is proposed to a museum, and then the team is kind of formed. here indeed it was Fang's choices, and it worked. In this case, it really worked. Maybe it's a miracle. We don't know how and why. There is no recipe, to be honest, because it's very also subtle chemistry between people. But maybe Fang can say just very quickly why he selected this team. And then we can unpack the way we decided to work together.
Okay, yes. Just give some brief clue about this. But yeah, of course, it's based on my appreciation for all the curators for their past, their practice. Like I've searched during the process. Actually, I read materials for Asli's practice. I really admire that part, and also respond to Anna, also the publication Farming assembly. Also, it's one of the reference when I start my a basic question of this what we can do for this biennial. And Merv Espina, he was one of the curator of the curatorial team of Sunshower Show exhibition, and then also we have connection, in the past few years. Also, yeah, and then the last member was Heiju, yeah, and based on her independent curatorial experience and also an institutional experience. So that's a very basic, and also I have to admit that I have a bit, how to say that? Is it too naive, imagination about to form a team that we can really work through dialogue and conversation to form an action. That's my motive. Yes. Yeah. And any other members?
Maybe we can develop and see how we work around the themes that actually each of us came. Well, I just wanted maybe to add something about this curatorial assemblage. Actually, there is always this question of authorial ownership. Obviously, there is this tension point between authors, our singular voices, and the collective voice that we need to form. And here, I think what we managed to do, what we like, at least the way we feel it, is this individual signatures managed to emerge, not despite, but within the collective. We even wrote it in our collective statement saying that the point was not to collapse everything into one single narrative and create a homogeneous voice, but to allow to do something polyphonic and yet collective, not just separate worlds that coexist, but play the same game, actually. Conceive the same play, like in a theater. That was important.
I just want to address another point that, yes, of course, we can understand or imagine that multi-voice, this kind of assembly could lead to the situation that really dilute all single voice, like an individual voice. But I still think that's the way to taking this risk and start like a conversation. Yes, so I think that's really important as during the especially in this collective curatorial process. Yes.
Maybe Asli or Merv can also add their thoughts about
Yeah,
this.
I've been thinking about it. Actually, there are maybe two things that need to be mentioned here, because when you curate collectively, well, there are two things that inform the final exhibition or the final content that you're creating. One is the collective, like the curatorial collective, in which case I'm speaking about the five of us. And the five of us chose very early on to work horizontally and to decide collectively, to take every decision collectively. Of course, for practical reasons, we did make like certain divisions of labor at certain points, like for example, you know, like two of us decided to work more on the screening programs, two other people decided to work more on the opening programs, and you know, there was a division of labor. But even when there was a division of labor, we chose to sign collectively. And so yeah, and to decide collectively as much as possible. That's one thing. The second thing is okay, you have the collective, and it's a good collective, but then you have the collective in relationship to the museum, the organizing body, you know, the organizing institution. It may not be a museum in every case. In this case, it is a museum, and that is the second aspect that actually informs the limits and the possibilities you have in being a collective, or you know, in whatever the exhibition you're doing. So, and in that regard, I think the museum does, as Fang mentioned, specifically this museum does have experience in working with teams of curators. Like this wasn't the first time, and it's a very you know, outspoken preference that they have, and I think this is very interesting. But they do have, also for operational reasons, Fang was always the contact person. So it was like, I think his position was the most difficult one to hold, because there's the curatorial collective, and then there's only him talking to the institution on a more, you know, decision level. So I think there was a lot of pressure on him at most times. Yeah, and I will stop now.
I'll oh, first of all, sorry, Merv.
Yeah, nothing more to add. It's just that Fang had the most difficult situation of midwifing from both ends.
I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into your the thought process and the curatorial process, and ask a little bit more also. I mean, you introduced it already, but maybe if you can give us a sense of how you ended up with the I struggled calling it a theme, but more of like a guiding title, let's say, a guiding idea, let's say, behind it, and how this reflected and affected your previous practice, or your overall practice, but also like the choices that you made within this show in particular, individually and collectively, let's say.
So maybe I'll start. You know, as Fang, as he mentioned, he brought us together with an initial framework, which were his obsessions and his interests. And as any good collective, we obviously wandered off, you know, and we went somewhere else. We put it aside, and each brought their own obsessions and questions onto the table. And so we kind of kept these threads, and we thought that, of course, at some point they will converge. Sometimes they will run parallel and maybe even contradict each other. This all was welcomed. And each of us wrote a separate curatorial essay too, and we each invited artists and worked with them independently. We didn't really rework collectively our ideas, but the fact that we were having these continuous conversations every week, 3 hours, made that this continuous mental conversation was there, which means that even our own ideas were influenced by each other's thoughts, were enriched by each other's thoughts. There's almost, I would say, no individual initial idea that was not reshaped through these conversations, almost unconsciously. And this is where it happens, actually, when it's like the magical element that you need for these things to happen is this kind of intellectual generosity, that you give your feedback, you give your thoughts, knowing that they will be gone, and they will enrich the collective thinking or others' individual thoughts, and you won't be able to claim them back, you know. So, but at least in the end, we'll arrive to something that would be richer than each of us would be able to conceive individually. And on more practical level, the theme appears. So we understood immediately there won't be one theme. There would be different threads, different themes converging together. And the title came from Merv, who is very good at poetic titles, but we had like 2 pages of essays of different poetic titles. And when he pronounced this one, and then I'll ask each of us to say what we saw in that title, immediately we understood that this one could work as a starting point, not as a theme, but it really reflected the way we were feeling at that moment, this kind of a sense of breathlessness, collective breathlessness. Because of the time we were in, you know, this ongoing catastrophes, and the agency that we were losing the grip on our agency. And each of us saw something different. I, for example, I saw the possibility of you know, holding your breath is this ancient practice of changing cognitive states, which means that a possibility of withdrawal also from the systems of violence, and possibility of imagining something else, going into altered imaginaries. But each of us saw different things there. Maybe Merv, you can tell what was your original thoughts when you came up with this title.
Actually, it's very simple. I think it was part of a very long list, and it's a title that actually comes from a text by German Filipina activist who interviewed Kiri Dalena. So the text is actually called "How to Hold Your Breath," and it was actually referencing another work, and it was a work that was that Kiri showed already in Taiwan, so we couldn't show that work. It's too recent. It was also it was in another project I was part of very recently, the Taipei International Documentary Film Festival that Kiri was also part of. But it was also about, you know, how she was navigating this sense of hopelessness being an artist and activist in the Philippines. And this was a kind of resistance, like a thinking of making it the choice, and not feeling hopeless about the situation. And for me, I gravitated towards it because I was looking also towards the other biennials, and the kind of titles that were popping up, not just biennials, but also exhibitions and books and whatever that were popping up around this time period. And I think some friends who were part of the Busan Biennale, they have Seeing in the Dark. So I like this tendency of poetic titles that's not so didactic. Maybe it will be it's a departure for me from the past iterations that were very that look at historical and literary references, and this was also a kind of natural inclination coming from a pulmonary pandemic, and it was. I didn't really think much of it when I put it there because maybe it was too obvious and on the nose, but it wasn't an easy decision. I think we dwelled on it for a month.
Could we say that the show came together when the title was there or not? Did this have a decisive?
I don't think so. I think the show had begun to form, and then the title came. And once we knew the title, it shaped back what the show was already. I think it was a mutual relationship between what we were deciding at the time, and once the title was there, that informed new decisions. But I think more than the title, I think what informed the exhibition for me personally was the trip to Taichung in March, like the research trip we did. That was the moment. And of course the title too, but yeah.
Maybe you can tell more about that trip, because that was the only moment when we met, actually, before the show. This was also very particular conditions for a team to work. We never met before, and we just met 2 months later, because we started in January 2024, and we had our first encounter and a trip to Taiwan for only 7 days or maximum 10 days in March.
Well, I think we had officially, like, this is because Christian, you already asked us this question in writing before, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer it. So the institution did invite us officially for a trip to Taiwan, Taichung, and the justification was a press conference. So we were present for a press conference. So it was thought of as a 1-week trip, 7 nights to be exact. But once you're there, of course, especially for Anne and me, who are based in Europe, it's once you're there, you want to. I mean, we stayed. We made the choice to stay using our own resources, and we actually spent almost 2 weeks in Taiwan. So an additional week, and then Fang, me, and Anne, we also went to see Yokohama Triennial that was opening at the time. So we did a trip to Japan. Also visited a few exhibitions in Tokyo, etc. So just to say that this was the first time that the 5 of us were brought together and we actually met physically. And then we were also, for me, it was my first time in Taichung, and for Anne also. So it was also just getting to know the context and seeing, you know, the people, the culture, the food, but also the textures, how the urban space is organized. And Merv had always been interested in the situation with migrant workers. So he brought us to very specific locations also that we got to know, like the ASEAN Square, which we've activated, like there's a work now in this separate place. And then we started building like an alternative map, for example. There are all these kinds of little small steps on the way when you try to work as a team. Which I like to call it scaffolding, like bits and pieces of a scaffolding that disappears. You don't see that anymore in the exhibition, but one part of the scaffolding we were building was, for example, to make a collective alternative map of Taichung City, just putting on the places and things that caught our attention, especially like the existence of 2 rivers, because there's a kind of a really interesting sewage system, like the old river, and then there's a new river on top of it. And then I don't know, the ASEAN Square and the migrant workers spaces were another thing, and there were some of the things they weren't there. But Taichung is, for example, a city where they build new things without destroying the old. So there's an overlaying also of train stations and train tracks, like the old one still exists but it's transformed, etc., etc. So those kinds of things like were done collectively, and the trip with Taichung, where we were physically together, was also, I think, and I will stop now, but it was also the beginning of us really responding to each other. It wasn't just about us responding together to a context, but it was also when we had the most intense exposure to each other's ideas, I think. So for me, that was when I started in my choices, responding to my colleagues' choices. So that was also there.
Thank you, Asli. Thank you, Anne. But more or less, or not more or less, but overall, thank you all, because I think it's also nice to see the way that you're interacting and so on. I think that also gives not just us, but I think hopefully also the audience a way to glimpse a little bit inside how the whole process was. And thank you also for answering one of the questions that we had prepared before, to give a bit more space to something else, to another questions that I want to jump to, which was posed in the chat. I'm aware of the time, so I think it's going to be more or less the last question. More or less, let's see. Depends on how long you answer. And it's an interesting question, especially because it entails the thinking of a different aspect of a biennial, which we actually don't get to talk much. And it's a question by Natalie Muhammad. Natalie, if you want to ask it, feel free. Otherwise, I'll just read it. Natalie's question is about
please read it. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Yeah. Please read it. It's okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, please.
Okay. So Natalie's question is about the publication and how you thought about it, and was it a similar process than putting together the exhibition itself? My comment on that is, of course, the publication has the limit of a linear narrative rather than a spatial one. So maybe that's a good point to start. But
I mean, this opens a whole series of problems, actually, meaning that actually there is obviously, when you make a team and you have a new project, you always come with the idea of creating a whole new world, right? Thinking that you can master everything from every step, from the publication to the exhibition to social media, everything. And then you have the institution that has its own formats that you cannot change, and catalog and social media and visual identity and so many other things, where these blocks were managed by the museum and where we absolutely couldn't intervene. We were in communication with the museum publishing department, research department, providing content. But the way the content was organized, even in the choices of photos, were completely handled by the museums. This is just, in a few words, the general framework of working with an institution. Maybe my colleagues will go deeper now and problematize it together.
I could just add one thing. Maybe the catalog was one of these things when, as curators of biennials, or independent curators working with different institutions, be it a biennial or not, there are different working ways depending on the country and the institution. But for example, just to speak of my preferences, I do think that institutional formats enter into my field of activity. Like when I'm curating an exhibition, it's not just about the exhibition, but also rethinking how the institution might be changed or reinvented through formats. And then, but in the case of this biennial and this museum, I think the definition of the curator's role was much more limited than that. So the expectation was for us to select artists and works and stop at that. So that was the constant negotiation point back and forth, where Fang had a difficult time, I think.
Well, we had a complete freedom to do it also. This is also, we have to mention that we never had any feedback or intervention about the themes, artists, ratios, whatever considerations. We really felt completely free, but within the exhibition. And we didn't see the exhibition as our only task. The thing is, we wanted always to go beyond the exhibition. At least me, I'm interested in invading all the spaces, but that was unfortunately not possible. Even for designing the opening events, we didn't have a possibility of imagining the way we would like to welcome people.
I would like to add from my point of view, like in Taiwan, the regulation of like public institutions invite guest curators mostly focus mainly on the same theme and or discursive or discuss and research and selecting artists. So I really still expect that in our art cultural landscape we can still like have a broader different nation or a different consciousness about what the curatorial can work for not only the institution but also has its own like a cultural or social function that really can extend. Yeah, that's my point. But and yeah, and but also that refer to the regulation or administrative constraints behind it, like for the procurement, all those process that really limit. Okay, how can we create or develop different models for that? Yeah.
It's understandable. I think nobody expects that institution's brain will go faster than an artist's brain or even a curator's brain. That's for sure. They have different pace. And working with an institution, we always know of their limits. So that was understandable. But one thing that was interesting, maybe the difference of this biennial, because it was also organized by a national museum and because of this very strict regulations, is that we didn't have the intervention of, for example, market very much in our choices, or external funding, private funding, because the museum had a very strict, a lot of restrictions there. And I think that was an interesting point, an interesting thing there.
And for me, I would like to take this chance to address more point. Like yes, and I had the two visions initiating the team and during the process, or my expectation about how to develop or extend the process of the Asian Art Biennial. The first one would be like, is that a possibility to hold like a pre-biennial event based on talks, discussion? I think that would be really helpful for the to extend, and also as the a preparation for the biennial. Since from understanding, like only a few biennial in Taiwan, for instance, like Taipei Biennial, they can really realize that they can appoint the curator for the next edition from the end of this edition. So that's they can have that really enough time for preparation. And secondly, I would like to say is about that initially when discussing with the National Taiwan Museum of Fine Arts, we knew that there are two biennials, mainly organized by National Taiwan Museum of Fine Arts, which is Asian Art Biennial and the Taiwan Biennial. From my very naive, not from my like imagination, I really hope that in the future, people can really have the chance to have the connecting or the dialogue between two biennials, like yes, really to to shift a bit of the model of the institution. That's the thing.
Thank you for the quite exhaustive answer. And I think, of course, there's a lot more to talk about, but I think it gives a sense again of some of the discussions. I did say it was the last questions, but there is quite an important questions that came up on chat, which probably will open up kind of like a Pandora's box, but we'll try to limit it to the question in chat itself. But it does touch on something that we had talked about before, which goes into the question of what an Asian art biennial is in the first place, and how you defined Asia. I think during the presentation you already gave a glimpse of how you proceeded with, especially with the presentation of the work of Gary Yen-Hsiang. So that already gave us an indication of how you approached this idea of Asia, which is of course extended from a physical, geographical one somehow. But I'll read the question in chat. So I mean, unless Langchen Yu wants to read out the question or ask you the question directly, that would be amazing.
Go ahead. Yeah. And I mean, time is limited. Yeah.
I'll try. And just as a heads up to everyone in present in the Zoom, this will be our final question because we're running really quite long. So Langchen starts by thanking you for the great exhibition. The poetic and imaginary question really provokes dynamic reflection on the relevance of arts to our contemporary world. In the interview, inter-interview video of the biennial with the curators, Merv mentions that in the biennial, Asia was no longer a specific place. Rather, it is an idea that keeps changing and expands beyond the geographical borders. As the biennial was put under the framework of the Asian biennial, I'm also wondering what kind of role does the idea of Asia play throughout your curatorial process? And does the idea of Asia also provide the convergence of concept for the collective work? I'll leave you with the question.
Okay, thanks to Lanchen, who's my friend and colleague, and we had a project last year, just before the biennial. I think I was drawn to this invitation to participate in this biennial because of the conceit of it being an Asian Art Biennial. I'm truthfully very tired of always being in curatorial projects where you're supposed to present things in terms of nation or region. And I'm like, for example, Fang and I were part of the Sun Shower Project, which was, I think, the largest survey of Southeast Asian contemporary art. It is a survey exhibition that started in Tokyo and then it went to Fukuoka and Taiwan, ironically, not in Southeast Asia. But then I've been part of several Philippine shows and whatnot. So there's always this. It always begs the question to represent and or question an identity. And with this Asian Art Biennial, I think looking at the past editions, it was always a curation by proximity. I think a lot of the projects either really put a geography into context in the theme. And we wanted to also really depart from this and to poke and challenge what Asia is and how to rethink it beyond this geographical location, but also looking at Asian. And I don't think being Asian is limited to time and place. It's also very much expansive now, and this reflects in some of the choices that we had in the artist selection and the screening program and whatnot. And for me, perhaps Asia can be a kind of liminal state, that it is a step towards something else, imagining something else. Because in the history of, for example, Asian art exhibition making, it's always a tendency between South Asia and East Asia, and the prompts are always seem to be coming from East Asia. Like, for example, the Fukuoka Asian Art Show started in 1979, 1990, 1980, and then it was soon followed by the near namesake of the Asian Art Biennial, which is the Bangladesh Asian Art Biennial, which started in 1981. But even before this, like in the era of like modern post, like post-war solidarity movements. We had the Asian Games Federation, and it started in Delhi. But like this imaginary of Asia didn't really was very different from in the East, in the West, for example, where the like Arab Peninsula, Turkey, and it was interesting for me to see and hear reactions that this biennial wasn't Asian enough, because it actually challenges their idea of what Asia is or what Asians are, which is good because okay, it's good that it's not Asian enough. Because it pokes the question: what is Asian enough? What are these conceits and stereotypes that you have? Um, and by putting this line of consideration in the biennial, I think we managed to challenge ourselves, and also look. We also try to really look beyond nation state representations. Like, how do you justify this and that artist? They have the same passport. That doesn't mean that they have the same experiences. No, we have to also consider the violence of the nation state against minorities, right? And how do we take this as a chance to also like look at these narratives and identities that Asia and the nation states within Asia have suppressed.
That felt like a strong enough statement. Does anybody want to follow up? Thank you, Merv.
I can maybe just add that if I can reuse that fashionable word of liminality coming from a liminal country, being also the first time integrated in this Asian Art Biennial, for me, it was very important to try to see this forming hegemonic narratives just in other context and how we can actually resist those. So the idea was not to replace one hegemony by another, and there are these kind of threats. I mean, we know the region was full of pan-Asian and pan-Turkic or pan-whatever narratives, and even the idea of Asian is very much connected also to the histories of Japanese militarism. So these histories are there, and every time there is a new homogenizing and overarching narrative that is created, it's important to know whose voices will disappear, whose narratives and visions will not be included at the same level, of being acknowledged. So that's why I think the idea of diasporic allows, to counter these hegemonic narratives. And here we don't have time, but it's also an interesting question. Why a tiny country that is redefining its place on the map and struggling for its existence as Taiwan is organizing a Pan-Asian Art Biennial? So what are the geopolitical games there?
I mean, from my point of view, maybe to just state maybe something that's obvious, but this was not my first time in Southeast Asia, actually. But I do think that there's I find, because the question was, how does the idea Asia play throughout your curatorial process is the question. I think that's an interesting question. If you really disconnect from geography and from nation states or from regional definitions at the political level, whatever, I think it's interesting to think of and maybe position ourselves in Southeast Asia, in a country like Taiwan. But I've also been looking at the Caribbean for a long time now, the last 6 or 7 years. Those are the 2 points in the world where I read the most about, because I think they speak to colonialism in a way that no other place does. And if we want to understand and act knowingly and where we stand historically in the grander scheme of things, wherever we are, even when you're located in Europe and doing something in Europe, I think those are the lines that we shouldn't forget, that needs constant activating and reminding. So I think in that way, maybe I can say that takes those places like Southeast Asia and Caribbean do constantly operate in everything I do, even when I'm doing something in Turkey. Like everything that I've learned by doing field work and reading about those places and their history. Like, it's just, for me personally, it's just this regional kind of parallel thing that happens to be attractive in a way. Yeah.
Did you want to comment as well?
Yeah, just only one like a simple point, that if you look at to the past edition of the Asian Art Biennial, you can still find the thread that how it look for not, I won't say the presenting the Asian art or discovering the characteristic of what is Asian art, but more like positioning art of Taiwan or positioning Taiwan in the wider landscape, art landscape of Asia. But I'm more interested in how can create dynamic through this repositioning like a process. Yes, so that's the basic spirit refer to how to form initiate the team.
Yeah, I want to first of all thank everyone in the audience that was so engaging and stimulating with their questions. We had prepared a number of questions ourselves, but I'm really happy that that we were directed in slightly other directions for the audience, as a sign of interest, curiosity about your work. And of course, I want to thank the four of you for being here today, for taking your time to present your project, to give us quite a deep insight into the thought process, into the selection process, into also some of the issues that come up, of course. I wish we had another hour and a half to really dig deep into some of the questions. But maybe that is also a signal to us that maybe we have to think of another space in which to reflect more on dynamics and trends and so on within biennial curatorial and artistic and directorial questions, rather than just a presentation of an exhibition. So that's food for thoughts for ourselves. So yeah, with this I want to thank you all. Remind you to keep an eye on our website and social media for future IBA stage and other events that will come up. And I also want to take the occasion, because it's the first IBA stage of the year, to remind you all about our General Assembly this year, which will take place at the end of June in New Mexico, in occasion of the 12th International Site Santa Fe, which is created by Cecilia Nimani. And we are just now in the process of defining the program, and you'll hear very soon about all the details. But it's going to be an exciting meeting, and for us, it's also the first General Assembly in North America, which, given the times we're in, is quite a significant choice. So yeah, thank you all. We hope to hear from each of you for future projects soon, and wish you a wonderful day or evening ahead, depending on where you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.